Well, thank you all very much. I want to take a second just before Chris goes too far backstage and recognize what he just said in the signing of the PLA with everyone. So can we have a round of applause just for that? That seems like a really great, yeah, just a great accomplishment and really a great way to start off this panel. You know, a lot of people have these panels and people are talking about, you know, a little bit in the ether about offshore wind, and everybody's excited about it, but there's economic theories about offshore wind and there's all of that. But the people who I have on stage here are the people who are going to actually make it happen, the people who are going to do the building, the constructing of the ultimately 25 gigawatts of offshore wind that we're going to need to help power the state of California and to make sure that California gets to 100% clean energy. So I'm really excited to have these people up here to be able to talk about it because we're going to turn it into action. So I'm going to give them each a chance to introduce themselves and then we're going to jump into some questions. So Travis?
Awesome, thanks Dan. Good morning everybody. My name is Travis Alexander. I'm a senior field representative with the NorCal Carpenters Union. We represent 37,000 working carpenters and their families across the northern 46 counties of California. We train in 11 apprenticeable crafts with most of those crafts that are going to be relevant to the offshore wind industry is going to be the carpenter, the pile driver, commercial diver, millwright, and the scaffold erector. So I'm excited to be here this morning and take part in this panel discussion. Thanks, Dan.
And Jeff.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, my name is Jeff Hunerlach. I'm the district rep and offshore wind consultant for the Operating Engineers Local 3, also the Secretary Treasurer of the Humboldt Del Norte Building and Construction Trades, where the good news from RWE and the state building trades, I just have to shout it out that that's monumental of success right there in a partnership that's going to be longevity. And we're really grateful. About the operating engineers, we have 40,000 members in 4 states. In California alone, we have 700 apprentices and 13% of that being women. And we're growing on that aspect and we're looking forward to moving forward. So thank you.
And now let's go down to Micah.
Hi everyone, good morning. It's good to be here and echoing all the enthusiasm about that great announcement that we just heard. My name's Micah Mitrosky. I am an international rep with IBEW's 9th District, which stretches from Alaska to San Diego, out to Hawaii, and over to Nevada. We represent over 700,000 members across the US and Canada. We are about as old as electricity, over 100 years old. And as our name implies, we perform all electrical work on projects on land, in the water, and everything in between. And I want to give a big shout out to, we have a number of IBEW local union leaders who are here from up and down the West Coast. If you all might just stand for a quick second. So really encourage everybody to connect with our IBEW local union leaders who are doing the work on the ground. And again, it's great to be here this morning.
Tristan.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Tristan Scholl. I'm the Vice President and Business Rep for Laborers Local 324. Local 324 is affiliated with LIUNA, which is the Laborers International Union of North America. Our local union specifically covers from the East Bay all the way up to the Oregon border, representing about 4,500 members. And out of that membership, we have over 10% female, and then another over 50% are indigenous or people of color. In California as a whole, we have somewhere around 70,000 members that are just ready to go to work in this offshore industry. And at least from some of the reports that I've seen, that's looking to be somewhere over 1,100 laborers involved in this kind of development. So we're really excited to be a part of that. Thank you.
Well, you guys have all said it. It's about getting to work. It's about getting people to work, and it's about making this thing happen. So tell me, what are you doing to prepare for offshore wind, and what steps are each of your unions taking in order to make sure that we've got the workforce that's going to be ready? So Travis, I'll start with you and we can just go down the line.
Yeah, sure. So we've got 4 training centers that are throughout the northern 46 counties that we're training in. Offshore wind-wise, you know, we've been working in renewables for decades. We've delivered a lot of successful complex projects and developments, you know, across the board. A lot of work in the onshore wind. So we've got experienced membership. We've got the training in place, curriculum in place, you know, to be able to pivot into the offshore wind. We've also been working collaboratively up and down the West Coast with our Southern California counterparts as well as Pacific Northwest and our East Coast counterparts where the work's currently happening. So we've done a lot of work going back to the East Coast, and getting up to speed on the different types of training that are relevant to the offshore wind industry, the GWO, Hewitt, Spratt training. And we're looking at how we can, retrofit and bring those trainings to the West Coast. This summer, we're going to start sending pile drivers out of Local 34 out of Oakland to the East Coast to work and work on those offshore rigs and those offshore projects and get them exposed over the next several years. So that way, when the industry lands here on the West Coast, we've got the membership that's already been exposed to the work, has worked out on the water, and it's going to be an easier transition. And through that as well, identifying those leaders and foremen and general foremen and superintendents that are familiar with the work. So it's going to be an easy transition for us, to pick up the work as it comes here to the West Coast.
Jeff?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I want to say we have an international conference or international training center in Crosby, Texas. We're currently, right now, we're working with 2 GWO companies to set up GWO there that we are going to be bringing out here to the West Coast. Unfortunately, we are looking at 8 or 9 years out before the offshore wind portion starts, but we are going to start training exclusively a lot sooner than that. And we're going to start in Crosby, Texas. I talked to our training center yesterday. Look, this is like almost $1 billion training center. It's just has everything. They're working with the GWO to set up all the pools and all of the other applicants for whatever they're going to need. But I will tell you this, that we are already sending people on the East Coast running cranes. As Travis had mentioned, we worked on land out here. We actually do a joint training thing at our local ranch here in out of Sacramento for the pile drivers and crane operators. So it's been kind of a good partnership because the apprentices are getting to work hand in hand together, and it's the real work. It's not like they're learning it at their training center. They're actually working together and actually being able to succeed and say, okay, now we can work together. So we're excited. We are already doing so much already, but again, we're looking at 8 or 9 years out. And to train an industry here today, what are we going to do with these folks? And that's why these PLAs are so important. PLAs are so important because it's just not the offshore wind industry, it's the other industry. If we want to grow a local California workforce for all of this, we have the people here. We just have to tweak our training center's curriculum just a bit, and it's not much because we're already doing the work.
Micah?
Yeah, I would say the good news for everybody, the skilled and trained electrical workforce needed to build and maintain these projects exists today. Just drilling a little bit into some of the numbers, in the 9th district of the IBEW, we have over 155,000 members. Most are working in construction and utilities. Roughly half, about 70,000, are here in the state of California. Up and down the West Coast, we have 25 electrical industry training centers where the IBEW and our electrical industry partners, which we operate, and that's where our apprentices train, our journey level workers do their additional skills and upgraded training. The skills needed to build and maintain these projects, the land-based skills, are already skills that our members have that we routinely train on. For any upgraded skills that are needed out in the water, we're already looking at how to leverage this existing training network. We're looking at GWO training. We're talking with our East Coast counterparts and looking at how we can best leverage that existing training infrastructure. But the great news is it already exists. We're looking out into the future and we're ready to go and get these projects up off the ground.
Well, this is something that the Laborers Union, LIUNA, we're really excited about, and I want to thank all my counterparts up here because if there's one thing that the trades really do know, it's skilled and trained. Between the 4 crafts up here, we're probably looking at over 2 million members in the construction industry. For us, it's almost 600,000. And just in Northern California, last year, we did over 400,000 hours of training for our members, almost 18,000 members. And when it comes time to train for offshore wind, we're going to ramp up just like we do with everything else. One thing that's really special about the laborers training is that we do have a stationary facility in San Ramon, California that helps train a lot of our members, but we also have a mobile training component with that. 90% of our training can be taken to the job site, it can be taken to the contractor's office or a remote location. And that's been very beneficial. But we've also been in talks with other organizations that are doing offshore wind training, and we don't know yet whether or not we're going to do in-house training, do a train the trainer, if the organizations are going to come out and build a facility that all the trades might share. But whatever it is, as one of my coworkers has said before, whether it's onshore, offshore, or outer space, laborers are going to be there and we're going to build it.
Well, that's good. I don't think we're quite there, but soon we'll have the solar satellites, and we'll count on you guys to make sure that we build them correctly. There's been a lot of talk about Humble and about Morro Bay, but let's include Long Beach in this if we can and talk about what kind of job growth are you guys expecting in those three areas, and what kind of work are you doing to make sure that we're really uplifting those areas, bringing in people, as Chris was mentioning just a couple minutes before, from disadvantaged communities, doing all the work that really highlights the diversity of California. So maybe we'll start with you, Mike, and can you just talk a little bit about what IBEW is doing and what kind of workforce are you expecting in those three areas?
Yeah, one of the things that I will comment on is one thing that's a big priority for us is seeing local content and a domestic supply chain. And I think when we look at some of the things that have happened on the East Coast, and particularly I will highlight NYSERDA and the procurement process in New York, where they built local content into their power purchase agreement procurement process, and it spurred some investments in that region for local supply chain. As we start to implement our procurement bill here in California, AB 1373, I think that there are some good practices that we can look at from New York, because we're really interested in seeing these types of local supply chain projects maximize work opportunities and maximize economic benefits in the local community. So that's something that I would really highlight as it relates to job creation here in California. And then in terms of outreach, we are regularly working with high schools, community-based organizations and nonprofits, pre-apprenticeship programs, and in fact, our local 11 in Los Angeles has someone specifically on staff to do outreach to women, a director of women engagement and community recruitment, and to bring more women into the trade. So that's something that we're doing on a regular basis, and again, up and down the coast, our local unions and our training centers are routinely doing this type of outreach. Our goal in the IBEW, as always, is for our local unions and our apprenticeship training classes to look like our local community.
Let's go to Jeff.
Yeah, well, I just want to speak directly to Humboldt on this. So the building trades are 15 affiliated trades, and Cal Poly have a partnership. And we just got through with our first MC3. You heard about the pre-apprenticeship from President Hannon. We just graduated 16 women in the trades. They weren't all women. That was the grant. It was $1.3 million, but it was formerly incarcerated women, people coming from drug backgrounds, very disadvantaged folks. And you know what? The instructor, all of the unions at the building trades came out and at least gave a presentation, because it's not about, hey, this is, I'm an operator, I want to be an operator. It's really about all the trades. And we try to involve all of our 15 affiliates, and almost every one of them showed up to talk about their individual trades. And you know what? When people get done with this program, they might just say, hey, I want to go to college. And we would encourage that if they don't want to be in the trades. So quite frankly, it was the best class that this instructor for 10 years have been doing these classes down in the North Bay. I asked him about it, and he said, look, these people were hungry. But here we are again in the same situation, and I'll say it and say it and say it. We need to have more PLAs for these people to go to work, because if they choose the operators, the laborers, the carpenters, electricians, or any of our other affiliates, we have to have these projects secured at the local level, not just in Humboldt or Del Norte, across the state of California. The UC systems, everywhere. Think of the monumental success we would have all coming together on that and having PLAs on all this work. But quite frankly, man, it was so awesome to see this very, very diverse crowd graduate. And I've heard it's the very first class that all 16 applicants graduated. So, I mean, I'm just telling you, it was success, and I'm grateful to be part of it, and I know our affiliates are too.
Let's go to Travis, and then I'm going to mix this question up a little bit down for you.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Dan. So, yes, we've been focusing a lot of efforts, from the ports all the way up into the Humboldt area, like Jeff spoke to. A lot of just early engagement mentioned throughout this conference over the last day and a half or so is, we've got to have the port redevelopment, part of the industry moving ahead and moving forward. In Port of Humboldt, for those of us that have been up there, that port desperately needs some help, so we've been engaged in conversation up that way. Also, working to entrench ourselves in the community up there. We do have a local union that is in Eureka. Our membership up there, carpenters, pile drivers, millwrights, we run about 1,400 members that currently work and live Santa Rosa North up towards the Oregon border. So we, community engagement wise, I'm gonna repeat a lot of what's been said already. We have the same partnerships across the board with the four trades up here on the panel. We do a lot of work, and it's even spelled out in our collective bargaining agreements of, recruitment of women into the trades, going out and bringing in people of color. When we talk about reentry out of the prison systems, we don't care what your past is. We're worried about where you're headed. And if you've got a good attitude, good work ethic, then everyone's welcome. There's no exclusivity in the Carpenters Union. Everyone's welcome. So shifting up to some of the things that we've accomplished up in the Humboldt, Del Norte area. Last year, we executed a pre-apprenticeship MOU with the Hoopa Valley Tribe. And through that, folks that successfully complete that pre-apprenticeship program will have direct entry into any one of our 11 apprenticeship programs. We're working, we've got a meeting coming up on Tuesday with the UROC to have that same type of conversation with them. We're also exploring the option of putting a 5th training center up in the North Coast area to be able to, train, not only the pre-apprentice and the apprentices, but also the journey level folks, and then with new industry, we're taking a broad lens view on this, and yeah, we're focusing on the offshore wind, the heavy lift terminal, the port redevelopment, but we're also looking several layers inland, because with that area and that part of the state, there's going to be a lot of infrastructure needed to support this new industry in housing, expanded healthcare, educational facilities and campuses, commercial space, and then hopefully we can attract some of the manufacturing and supply chain folks up to that part of the state, and it's all job creation, so that's kind of the approach that we're taking to it, and again, like in my opener, we're excited about the industry and the upward mobility that's going to bring to the North Coast area, and frankly the state and the entire western part of the U.S.
Before I get to you, Tristan, I just want to tell a little story. It was about 7 or 8 years ago when I was looking at offshore wind, and I was trying to figure out, what kind of steps could we use to not only promote offshore wind here in California, but potentially to build some new alliances. And so I reached out to my friend Eddie On, who you've heard from already, and he runs the Brightline Defense Center. And I was talking to him, and we were saying, okay, we've got an environmental group, we've got an environmental justice group, but who else do we need to reach out to? And Eddie was smart enough to say, hey, let's find somebody from labor. So we started to ask around and see, and the name that kept coming back to us was Jeff. And so, Jeff, I checked the first 3 emails you didn't respond to, but that's okay. I finally got you on the phone. And we ended up having a conversation with Eddie and Jeff and I, and we started to talk about, if we could build an alliance here in Sacramento what kind of benefit would that provide? What kind of opportunities would then legislators and people in the agencies be able to see that if these three groups that don't always get along could come together on a project like this, what kind of benefits would that provide? And it seems to have worked out pretty well. We were sponsors of AB 525. We worked together at the California Energy Commission to get them to set their goals. We worked really closely together again with AB 1373 to get central procurement through. There's still more that we have to do. It's often a challenging relationship because we don't always agree. But it was one of those things of sort of bringing those three different groups together that really helped move things in the Capitol. You and I were talking a couple days ago about what kind of work we could do locally, you know, whether it's in the Central Coast or in Morro Bay in particular. And can you talk a little bit about, you know, what you bring to that?
Yeah, Dan, thanks for the question. So the laborers, along with a lot of the other crafts here, we've been involved with a group up north called Core Hub. And Core Hub has been just invaluable to when it comes to the community engagement. Core Hub has brought labor together, environmentalists together, fisheries together, tribes together. If you want a one-stop shop of community engagement in Humboldt, it's going to be Core Hub. And you know, at least for the laborers union, I think we could recreate that in Morro Bay, Long Beach areas. And if anybody here is interested in that kind of stuff, our business managers for Morro Bay and Long Beach are actually here with the laborers union. If they could stand up in the back over there, if they're here, yeah, right there. They'd be great people to talk to and engage. But having environmental groups and the fisheries at the tables with us, hashing out our disagreements and on where we can come together has been very beneficial for all of Humboldt and for offshore wind. And if anybody's hesitant to do something like that in Morro Bay or Long Beach, I would implore you to reach out to Core Hub, reach out to the trades, ask us what our experience has been. It's been almost 2 years that we've been involved with Core Hub, and I can't think of a better group that's been put together for a new market like offshore wind. And if we could have had something like that with solar, if we could have something like a discussion with that about nuclear, and even the refineries, I think it would go a lot further when it comes to having those relationships with the environmentalists and the building trades.
I want to take what you said and just try to press the button a little bit more, especially with people here in this audience, is, you know, up north we do have Core Hub. I think we're really lucky to have that. We've got Katarina, I don't know if she's still here, but she's been doing great work as the executive director up there. But if you're from the Central Coast and want to get involved in something like that, I think there's some people that are trying to jumpstart that or kind of get that off the ground. Could people just raise their hands or sort of say, hey, I'd want to get involved? I think some of the business managers, if you could stand up if there's any. All right, we've got a couple folks there. So let's try to find each other at the break and say, hey, that's the Morro Bay group, and do the same thing down for Long Beach. So if you're from Long Beach or want to get involved with something that would be a Core Hub-like in Long Beach, just raise your hand now and take a look around and see if we've got some people there. So there's a couple folks here and down here. So let's make sure that we get those groups together, because if we can somehow template what's happened up in the north and bring that down to the Central Coast and then ultimately down to Long Beach, we can really move further faster. And I think a lot of people up here have been talking about, oh, well, you know, how do we do that? And this is one of the on-the-ground ways to do it, where we don't have to, you know, streamline, which is a really difficult word for some of the environmental provisions that we have, but to be able to all work together and come to agreements on a set of these programs and policies that we have at the local level with local elected officials, with the local labor, with the environmental groups, with the environmental justice groups, the tribes, the fisheries, all the groups that are up there in Core Hub, let's bring them down and do the same thing at Morro Bay and do the same thing down in Long Beach. And I hope that we can use this panel as a way to sort of kick that off. So that I think would be really great. But let's get into the sort of workforce development, because that's another key piece that, you know, we have to do. I've been thinking about this and sort of what kind of support do we need from either the state or are you guys looking at for workforce development, where when you think about it, you go, this is going to be a real benefit for us and allow us to go forward. And why don't I have you go first, Micah?
Sure. So this is where one of the really key ingredients is the project labor agreement, and why one of the many reasons why the announcement from our state building trades leadership and RWE was so exciting, because At the heart of the PLA is local hire. It connects our local union hiring halls with joint labor management apprenticeship, which is the gold standard in the industry, and it connects those to the individual projects. So it brings all the pieces together in a written agreement and a written commitment, and that is what is going to deliver on the local hiring results, making sure that people from the local community are working on these projects and are also brought into the apprenticeship training programs on these projects. So we're excited about RWE's announcement, and we look forward to seeing the rest of the 4 leaseholders making similar announcements soon.
Tristan, do you want to take that one too?
Yeah, I'd also like to say thanks to RWE and the State Building Trades for really getting ahead of the game and getting something set aside for labor. And the biggest component to that is the local hire, right? I don't live in Eureka, and I would assume most of these people here don't. I think Jeff does, though. But if anybody doubts that our #1 concern is local hire and the community, then they've got it all wrong, because that's what our biggest concern is. For us, the laborers union in Humboldt County, we have about 350 members locally. 20% of our apprenticeship is female. That's one of the highest numbers across the state of California. So we do also try to partner with the workforce development groups, and we want to get out there to the communities, the tribes, the people of color, the disadvantaged communities, and explain to them, hey, the laborers union started from the disenfranchised. We started 121 years ago, and we were started because we were the members of the trades that the other trades at the time did not want. So for 121 years, we have been fighting for the community. We've been fighting for the disenfranchised. We've been fighting to get people locally in their areas to go to work. And if you want to look anywhere across the state, that's one thing that the laborers do really well, is putting local community folks to work. And that's across the country, actually. So.
Okay, the next question I'm going to take from what's on the board here in front of us, and I'm going to come close to breaking one of the rules that we have in the Offshore Wind Now Coalition, which is we try not to talk about things that we know are going to be divisive amongst the group, because we know that that can potentially lead to some trouble. But this question, I was thinking about asking it, and I was sort of like, I don't know how to ask it. So how is the offshore wind industry learning from the offshore oil industry and thinking about reskilling the workers in the fossil fuel to move to the wind and clean energy? I know it's a little bit controversial, and it can take us in a spot where I might not agree with you all, and that might lead to a problem here on stage, but I'm going to trust us that we're going to be able to stay civil and have a good conversation on this. So,
I can take that one, Dan. So when you become a journey level electrician in the IBEW, you don't train on one specific technology. You train to build any kind of energy technology and maintain any kind of energy technology. From where we sit today, IBEW members have built roughly 20,000 megawatts of renewable energy in the 9th District. Yesterday, we heard about the 10,000 megawatts of battery energy storage here in the state of California. The vast majority of those were built by the IBEW. And so when you're talking about moving between energy technologies, we've seen energy change just a tad over the past 130 plus years of our existence. So we're ready. These same skills for offshore wind apply to other kinds of energy industries.
anyone else want to take a crack at that one?
Yeah, I'll talk.
Please.
Yeah. Jeff and I are going to arm wrestle for it real quick. So, yeah, no, I mean, so for the Carpenters, we have, like Micah mentioned, our journey level craftspeople have the ability to work across all 11 crafts that we cover in Northern California, as long as they have, you know, the applicable skill set and the certifications needed to work, you know, or shift from, you know, what they may specialize in into other types of craft work and other scopes. You know, so we have members currently working in fossil fuel industry, you know, that work in the refineries, work around the petroleum, you know, industries and such. And so it's an easy transition for them to move into the offshore wind or into the renewable space. Like I'd mentioned in my opener, you know, we work and have worked for decades, you know, in the onshore wind farms. You know, we do everything from the foundation to the blade. You know, granted, we're talking about floating platform foundations out in the water, different landscape, obviously. You but we're a versatile union. Having those 11 crafts, having the structure that we have, not only in Northern California, but statewide, and then across North America, it affords us and allows us to be able to quickly pivot, as needed and shift. We can design and create and publish new curriculum, pretty quick turnaround, because we handle that all in-house at our International Training Center in Las Vegas. So again, we're flexible. We go where the work's at, and we can adapt and bring a skilled workforce, experienced contractor base to any and all project. So.
And again, before we go to the next one, I just, and maybe for my own edification here, but you were saying there it's easy for the workers to move from a fossil fuel industry to an offshore wind industry. What kind of incentives can we put in there that make it even easier?
Good question. Incentive-wise, I would say, the offshore work, is different. And again, as I spoke to, we're sending members to the East Coast to work because one of the biggest things that we're going to have to incentivize and work around is a lot of our members across all the trades up here today and the others, we typically don't work offshore. We have some folks that do work offshore on oil rigs and platforms, but it's not a common occurrence for our membership. Our membership, for the most part, outside of our pile drivers and divers, are land-based. So that's part of our thinking is that expose them to that, because talking to the East Coast counterparts, we've got crews that are out on barges and rigs out in the water for 4 weeks at a time right now, and then they're back in for 4 weeks. So that's something that, internally we're looking at, and working to identify those members that are willing to make that shift. That's probably the biggest piece of that for us, the skill set and the work. We've built some of the greatest infrastructure projects and some of the greatest buildings, across the globe. So, but I think incentivizing that, I think it's a good question, a good point, and like I said, it's something that we're going to work on internally. So.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, real quick. So everybody had mentioned, truthfully, about the skill sets. Operators are no different. Look, we're already doing the stuff on the water. We're already working. Our dredge people, they work out on the water for sometimes months at a time, and they get either boated in for supplies or the supplies come out. They barbecue out there every day. They make the best of it. And in the oil industry at the refineries, we have about 175,000 man hours a year here in California. So to talk about, we say the transition, these are real families, laborers, operators, carpenters, electricians, people that are working and have been working in the oil industry. That's why it's a touchy question, Dan. I know. These are things me and Dan don't talk about in our coalition, but truthfully, they need to be talked about because it's not just 175,000 man hours a year. These are real people, skilled and trained labor, running forklifts in the refinery, running cranes in the refineries, and we're already doing it. So the transition, it is minimal. We built the Golden Gate Bridge, by golly. We rolled out a set of plans and we came up with the engineers to say, hey, we're going to make this happen. The industry doesn't need to worry about a transition or anybody in the audience because we're up for the task. And if we can, all we need is a set of plans and we're going to make it happen. And I'm confident that we're going to make it happen. So I think the transition, we're already doing it because we're already doing the work. There's going to be some tweaks in our training programs, obviously, but other than that, it's not going to be hard, Dan.
Yeah, I'll try to make it quick. So I started my career off as a laborer 20 years ago in the natural gas pipeline industry. That's what I started in, mainline transmission stuff. Then it went to coal-burning power plants. Now we're seeing the transition into solar and offshore wind, which is huge. And to give an example of how we can pivot and shift fairly quickly, when the major fires happened in Santa Rosa, we didn't have laborers who were experienced in hazardous waste fire cleanup, right? Maybe in nuclear plants, maybe in land remediation, but the laborers union, we were able to put 750 members through the hazardous waste 40-hour cleanup course in 30 days. And a lot of those people went right to work. They went through their class, went right to work, and we developed a classification for laborers for that kind of cleanup work almost overnight because that was the need. And that's the same thing we're going to do with offshore wind.
And I would actually add one final point on this. This is part of the reason why the IBEW worked so hard to get strong labor standards in federal legislation like the Inflation Reduction Act. As new energy industries are being created and are emerging, we need to make sure that they are creating union jobs, and that was a top priority of the IBEW as this legislation was coming together.
We've only got a couple minutes left, so let me just ask this quickly and maybe ask each of you to give sort of a 1-minute answer for this. But what is the sort of one thing that you would want to learn from the East Coast that you would want to bring here to California? So, Jeff, why don't we start with you?
Wow, that's a good question.
Yeah, I've been to the East Coast
Well,
with you, so I know.
I can tell you that California, in my opinion, being from California, we're already so far ahead. And when we say, what do I want to bring here, or what should we bring here? I think California just does it better, truthfully. And no offense to the East Coast. I mean, it's always better to be number two.
Jeff, so.
Instead of number one. There was a lot of headaches, a lot of backaches, a lot of heartaches on the East Coast. But, one of the things I would like to see is industry standards, skilled and trained, all the way across the board on all the work, manufacturing, supply chain, everything done on a project labor agreement. And I think it's being done out there. That's anything to do with the offshore wind industry and the supply chain and manufacturing should be covered under agreement if we really want to help build California's workforce.
Okay. Tristan?
I agree with Jeff on being number two sometimes is good. I actually just got back from New Bedford, and I saw the Vineyard offshore wind project, which was amazing. And what I'd like to try to bring out here is a lot of the training that they're already doing out there. While we may not need it just yet, I would like to start getting our members trained on that kind of training immediately so they can experience. We can get as many members through that training as possible so they can see, is this something that I'm really interested in? Is this something I want to do? And maybe some of those people who don't want to go over the water, some of those people who don't want to work in a port, we'll weed those out immediately, right? And then those other people, hopefully we could try, like the Carpenters are doing, and see if some of those local unions on the East Coast will take some of our members, put them through some of the job sites and do some of that work. So by the time that work does get here, our members are ready, they're warned to go, and they're experienced in that industry already. And they'll have a local workforce that they can learn from.
Travis?
Yeah, no, agreeing, with Jeff and Tristan. Same type of thing. I've been to the East Coast, been to New Bedford, Tristan just spoke about, and the collaboration that we've done over the last couple of years with our East Coast counterparts and them getting to see it, live it, dispatch the members, train the members, make sure that they're all ready to go, has been super beneficial to us here on the West Coast because even though we're years away, a lot of this work is going to happen, in the meantime, so just continuing that collaboration, communication with them. We're looking at, some of the GWO training and some of the other specialized training of not having to do that third party, but doing it in-house. We've already established GWO training at our UBC Union Dive School in Sicklerville, New Jersey. So we're going to look to, on top of that 5th training center up in Eureka, we're looking to do a UBC dive school here on the West Coast. So we're going to bring a lot of that training in-house that's going to be relevant, and we'll be able to deliver it. And it's not going to be exclusive of anybody, so we're going to be able to intake folks from outside of our ranks as well, and make sure that we are an integral piece along with the other building trade unions in the communities, to help bring the offshore wind industry, successfully to fruition here on the West Coast.
Okay, Micah, you've got to talk really fast.
And I see the timer counting down. I'm also going to quickly hit on training. So one of the things that we are learning from the East Coast, that we know there are some specialized certifications required to work on these projects. And I will say that information does not always seem to be getting out as seamlessly and as quickly as it could be. I know we've requested this information. I would really ask and urge industry to please provide us with a list of those required certifications soon so we can start. We're ready to gear up on our training, and we would really like to have that list. So that would be my request and my ask.
Well, a big round of applause to the 4 panelists here who have done a great job and are going to be the builders of this offshore wind industry. Thank you all very much.